Add that to the list. We knew we were psychiatrists half the time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to round 52 of the WBC Talks. This is Friday, and it's going to be a really special round with Mr. Bob Arum and 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, who I know for long ago, and I will have the pleasure to work with them with the Space TV starting next Tuesday.
Right.
But let me introduce first Mauricio Suleiman, President of the World Boxing Council. Mauricio, how are you?
Thank you, Victor. I'm very excited, very happy to have one of the legends of the sport, one of the greatest promoter in the history of 300 years history of the sport of boxing. Bob Arum goes beyond eras, goes beyond the imagination, and I'm sure we're going to have many great moments during this conversation. And here with 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, my dear Carlitos, who is a Cowboys fan, and I cannot figure out how he is allowed to be in top rank when the top rank is a Giants empire. So we'll talk about that later during the program.
Yes, that'll be more important stuff.
Yes. Welcome, Bob. How are you?
Thank you. Very good, Mauricio. And what you said, you know, what ran through my mind when I met your father, the late 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗 in the 1970s, would he have ever believed that I would be talking to his son on a computer screen all these years later? He would have thought I was out of my mind, right?
Right. I mean, there in the movies they used to put video conferences, and we all thought it was impossible.
Right.
I remember Soylent Green, the movie. Yeah. They had that video conference, and it was mind-blowing to think someone could talk by a telephone.
Yeah.
But now it's reality. And how are you, Carl? How's everything?
Everything is great. We're getting ready for Tuesday, which is our debut, and you know, a lot of hard work by everyone involved, you know, to put these shows on. But, you know, there'll be some bumps along the way, but we can't wait to do it and be out of the box first, and then let the other promoters come in and do their shows too. And hopefully we get back to some normality.
Mauricio, I just want to say that Brad Jacobs, Carl, Todd DeBuff worked for over 2 months to get a protocol how we could do this and live with the coronavirus. It was a lot of work. We got big medical help. In Nevada, the former head of the MGM is now the coronavirus czar. Jim Marin got us all the testing and everything to enable us to get events on without spectators. But my point is that we have a 30 to 40 page protocol that we've used, which has been cleared by everybody, all medical authorities, to open up boxing without spectators. And I want to reach out to all the promoters all over the world. Just contact us and we're happy to send you the protocol. You don't have to use it, but I think that would be our contribution to boxing, that it's available, and anybody that wants it and is thinking about opening up boxing in their jurisdiction without spectators, I suggest that they review this protocol and see if they can follow it, and it'll help them to open up boxing.
That is very You have to be praised for that, because we often find in our world that closeness, that ego, that abuse of power in which people like to hold on to things. And for you to open up the protocol and your ideas and your success programs, that is loable, and that I congratulate you for doing that.
Yeah, this is not the time for people to be selfish. This is the time to realize that everybody involved in boxing are colleagues, and we should do what we can to help each other.
Absolutely. We have some artwork of the upcoming events that we're going to be showing on the screen. I think the world is waiting. We are all excited. It's been a nightmare. We have had no activity. So you want to tell us about this 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗 event, June 9 at the MGM?
Well, let Carl put together these great cards. You know, the first thing we had to make sure was that which fighters remained in shape so that they could start out competing. You know, some of the fighters that we were considering weren't yet ready, so they're going to go later on. So Carl, talk about the fights.
Sure. You know, first out of the box in the main event would be 𝗧𝗥𝗨𝗡𝗗 Stevenson, who's obviously one of the bright young stars in today's sport. He's making his debut at 130 pounds, moving up in weight. He's still a champion at 126, but you know, you can see from the size of the kid himself that he's growing. So eventually, or pretty soon, he'll be campaigning at 130 pounds. Caraballo is a solid fighter out of Puerto Rico. And what Bob alluded to earlier is when we had to finally come up with confirmed dates, we really had to see who would be ready to go first out of the box. And knowing Shakur, he's always in the gym, he always stays in shape. So we knew that he was definitely one of the guys that we can look at, and why not come back with Shakur? Then the prospect is you have to go out and try and find opponents that really want to fight Shakur, that can get in the country, all those parameters that need to be met. And, you know, Brad Goodman and Bruce and all of us would huddle up and say, okay, who's actually available? Then you got to find out, okay, I got good news for you. I got a fight for you, but the bad news is it's against Shakur. But this kid stepped up to the plate right away. And, you know, kudos to him. He's on his way from Puerto Rico to Las Vegas right now as we speak, as is Shakur, to undergo the protocol that we spoke about earlier. But no better fighter than to start off the series with 𝗧𝗥𝗨𝗡𝗗 Stevenson, who, as you know, was scheduled to fight Miguel Mariaga back in March in New York. And literally 2 days before the fight, everything was canceled. I mean, that's when this whole pandemic really hit levels that none of us have ever seen before. So it's great to get him back right now.
And unfortunately, Mariaga
Yes.
went back to Colombia,
Right.
and therefore we can't get him in
Right.
for that fight. So you have to understand, a lot of these fights that we're doing, we don't have available to us fighters who are residing outside of the United States.
Which limits the talent pool, especially in the lower weight classes.
Later on in June, we have one Tuesday night, we have one of the Maloneys, and the next Tuesday night his twin brother fighting. They're Australia, and they called us and they said that they want to get in action with us. And we said, well, sorry, we can't do anything because you're in Australia. And how they did it, they went to the Australian government, they got special permission. And one Sunday, they ended up, both of them, in Las Vegas. We put them into a sort of a quarantine. We got them tested for the virus. They're negative. They came up to the office yesterday and they're ready to go. So I say to anybody listening, if you got a fighter and he's outside the United States and you know, or you can figure out how to get him here, assuming he has a visa, like the Maloney kids already had visas, hey, just call us. We're happy.
We'll give you a date right off the bat.
We're happy to use you.
Right.
I got all these great UK fighters that I can't bring in because there's a travel ban.
It's a game changer. I mean, boxing by itself, it's complicated. Matchmaking is complicated. And now you get all these different variables. that make just things, but this is something to adapt. And you're taking a huge step, and it's very exciting. I want to congratulate Top Rank, and you have a wonderful team, great staff, very committed, and also the Nevada Commission, who is working diligently to find the ways to open up and understand the need for sports to get back into action.
Right.
We are all tired of watching the replays of Super Bowl and World Series and the
Well,
big fights.
they had to put on what they had.
Of course.
And now that once we get this launch, which starts on Tuesday, our people are already beginning to work on phase 2. And phase 2 will be boxing with limited number of spectators. In other words, we hope that by September, we'll be able to do like the great Lomachenko against Lopez. That's a big fight.
That's a big
Do
fight.
it with, say, in a 10,000 seat arena with maybe 2,000, 2,500 people spread out, provide them with food and everything. I mean, we're figuring out how to do that, how to get that done. Or also for bigger fights like Fury and Wilder, which we hope to, if we're going to do it in the United States, we have to do it before the end of the year. And we're looking for a big place like the old Cowboy Stadium, AT&T Stadium in Dallas, or the new Raider Stadium in Las Vegas, and to do it for 25, 30,000, even 20,000 people, spread everybody out, and gradually bring boxing back. I don't think we're going to get the boxing or any sport with packed arenas until we get an effective vaccine. That's my, but in the interim, we can get sports back, particularly boxing, with limited spectators.
You have been a visionary. You have had tremendous success. You are one of the greatest promoters because you know how to build an event, how to build a career. And throughout this career in boxing, you have faced many challenges. You faced apartheid, you faced 9/11, you faced wars. What does it drive you to keep improving and changing? What makes you be that visionary that implements the changes?
Well, you know, my whole philosophy as a person, not just as a boxing promoter, was that you have to adapt to what the situation is, and you have to look into the future to determine how people will view events, how people will act, and so forth. And when you are convinced of what the future might look like, then you have to bring in the right people to implement that vision. And I think that a lot of people, not limited by myself, have a vision of what the future will be and so forth, but they don't take the next step, and that's bringing in people to help effectuate that vision. Because, I mean, look, let's be honest, Mauricio. I mean, I know that you and your family were always, and rightly so, friendly and close with Don King. And King was a great promoter. And King also was somewhat of a visionary. But the problem with King is he wouldn't bring the people in to effectuate that vision. And unless you keep, it's like an athletic thing. You can have the greatest Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman, but you have to bring in younger people to keep it going. But that's true of any business, and it's particularly true in the sport of boxing.
You cannot be a one-man show.
That is correct, particularly as you get older, because as you get older, you have had great success doing things a particular way, and because of the technological innovations, that way may no longer work, right? And you need people who are younger, who are living in society to say, hey, Bob, that worked 30 years ago when you were doing these big closed circuit fights, but that's no longer going to work now.
And as you can see, Mauricio, out of all the events you mentioned in the past, and we get to pandemic today, the one thing that hasn't worked for Bob is his razor. So,
See this?
I mean, and is this? We never knew he could grow a beard, but here you go.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you.
Never seen him with a beard.
It saves me at least 10 minutes a day.
Of course.
Right. So if you assume one day of the weekend you wouldn't shave anyway.
Right.
6 days, right?
Mhm.
6 days, 10 minutes, 1 hour a week I owe to keeping a beard.
Right? Perfect. Perfect.
Erika Montoya, she's asking, you have been in unbelievable events, all sellouts. How do you envision a fight without crowd? How do you feel today? How do you envision it? And what do you have to say about that?
Well, the first thing is I talk with the fighters, and the initial reaction of almost every fighter is, I'm not going to fight without crowds. I want to fight with crowds. And I say to him, son, that's not your choice. Your choice is to fight without crowds or not to fight.
Not fight.
Right? That's your choice. So, of course, everybody said, well, then we want to fight. Of course, crowds are so important for boxing and other athletic events. There's no question about it. There's not even an issue there. But we can't have crowds now. We can't do these fights for the public now. So I think the next best thing is to do them without crowds. We're going to replicate everything that you were used to with crowds. We've already signed up. My beautiful ring card girls will be there holding up signs and the announcers and everything. But we can't do it for crowds now. And we're going to provide, and we're not doing 10 fights on a card now. We initially, I think the first card is at 6,
Right.
and then we're down to 5 each card because, I mean, we never had this situation where we have to test them, put them in a bubble in a hotel, feed them in a particular restaurant, have them work out and spar in a facility on the property. All of these things are completely different for us. So obviously we can't go with 8, 10 fights. We had to cut it down, but there'll be good fights. You're going to be on this, and all the fights will be televised. So the first week, in addition to Shakur's fight, what's the semi-main? Michaela, beautiful.
Michaela Meyer, top
a
women,
US,
young women fighters.
Olympian,
Yeah.
one of the terrific women fighters. We also have young heavyweights who, luckily, Guido Vianello, the Italian Olympian.
For Kirky, we put him on for Kirky.
Fratello, bellissimo.
Stayed in Las Vegas and trained with Kevin Barry, so he's on the card. This kid, Jared Anderson, heavyweight, who sparred with Tyson Fury and is the hero, the unsung hero in Fury's battle. They sparred every day. And Fury told me that I don't know if I could have been as successful as I was with Wilder without
Jared Anderson.
Yeah. And he's on the card.
Robeisy too.
Yes, and the kid that beat Shakur in the Olympics.
Robeisy Ramirez.
Robeisy Ramirez is on the card.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, people again, we can't do the impossible. We can't do this with 10, 12,000 people. We can't put on 𝗧𝗥𝗨𝗡𝗗 every week, but we'll be doing those fights. We'll be doing, because 𝗧𝗥𝗨𝗡𝗗, we understand, has a green card and is making arrangements.
He has a green belt too.
A green belt too. And he's making arrangements to come over here in the middle of June, and we hope to have him fight Lopez in September.
You were impacted. You were the first boxing, in fact, the first world event that got canceled was the Ramirez-Postol fight, which was going to take place in China.
Let me talk about that. Let me talk about that, because Brad Jacobs and I went over, I think it was October, made arrangements for that fight to take place on a Sunday morning over in this island in China, 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, right off China, but it's part of China. And the people put up the money that they were supposed to put up. It was going to be a big event. It's a magnificent, magnificent, magnificent resort. They have 11 golf courses.
12.
Yeah, 12.
I was going to play every one of them too.
And beautiful hotels. And now we're getting into January and mid-January, and we're hearing about the virus in China, and we did a little investigating and found out that they've had 12 cases on the island, people coming from Wuhan to the island, 12 cases. And we talked with ESPN that was going to do the fight, the February 1st or 2nd.
Super Bowl weekend.
The Super Bowl weekend.
Super Bowl day.
Yeah.
And we said, no, it was too dangerous. And we called up the people who owned this magnificent resort and told them, and they said, we're glad you called, because we've already had 50% cancellations from our customers. So we knew that the virus was serious. We knew that the virus was spreading outside of Wuhan. We knew, and we canceled that fight. The friggin' president of the United States had his head up his ass, and he did nothing, and so many people died because of that. That's the truth.
It is.
That really is the truth. We were the canary in the tunnel, the canary that really called the alarm, because we followed it. We were careful people. Unfortunately for us, Postol and Freddie Roach were already over in China, so we had to bring them back. But again, and Ramirez was leaving that night.
He was on the way to LAX
The
with
LAX
Robert Garcia.
But we knew, and we called a halt, and we did the responsible thing. And the fact that the government in the United States sat on its ass and did nothing is inexcusable.
It took a whole process. Then you had scheduled for May 9th in California. And then what's the schedule for Ramirez and Postol? Is there any?
Yeah, we talked with Rick Merigian, his announcer. We talked with Vadim and Tom Brown, and they're going to get Postol over here next week, and we're going to. Yeah, we talk, and they're going to get Postol over next week, and probably the second week of August, we're going to do that fight, and we're planning. We're not, going crazy. We're planning everything for the setup we now have in Nevada.
Right.
How great is Jose Ramirez? Jesus, what a story! What a character! What a hero for humanity he is.
I agree with you, Mauricio. I mean, from the time I met him, I realized that he was something special. How good he is as a fighter, I wasn't completely sure. Nobody can until you see it in the ring. But I knew as a person that he was superb, really caring, wanting to give back to his community. And he is an example of the great contribution that Mexicans have made in this country. His father came over as a worker in the fields. He wasn't a citizen. Most of the people who work in the Central Valley, picking our crops, our fruit, nuts, are Mexicans. They stayed here. Jose was born in the United States, so he was a citizen, but he worked in the fields along with his father and mother. They built a life for themselves. I mean, it's like a really great story, and it shows how great the United States can be if we give everybody a chance. And Jose is the poster boy, I think, for the contributions that Mexicans have made in this country.
It was a historic night when he won the title. It was precisely the 2000 world title fight of the WBC. So we made a special belt for that occasion. And he turns around and has that belt, and he decides to auction that belt to get money for the less fortunate. He goes and changes the laws in his community. I mean, he is a true representative of the best of boxing, and as a person, I'm very happy, proud that he's a WBC champion. What you have done with his career is sensational. It's a very special.
And in addition to being a nice person, he is very smart. In other words, he knows what has to be done in his community, and he's ready to step up. He's not somebody who just allows people to use their name. He takes part in the community, and I think someday that you will be happy when Jose Ramirez is elected to the United States Congress, or maybe even the US Senate, or who knows, runs for president or vice president. The first president I think we'll get as a fighter is little Manny Pacquiao, who told me once again, I did a Zoom telephone call with him, Bob, I'm gonna run in 2022, and when I win, I want you there at my inauguration.
That is unbelievable. It's so important to have people support the fighters. Rick Mirrigan, he's an example of someone who takes care of Jose Ramirez. How important is your contact with the manager of your fighters, of the fighters that you promote?
There are some managers that really contribute to the fighters' betterment, really get their hands dirty. Meridian is one of those guys. He always looks for the best places for his fighters to fight. He makes deals with companies in the area that help support his fighter and the fights. He is an exemplary manager. There are other managers that are very good also, that are in the gyms with the fighters, that make sure that the fighter gets the best training, that the fighter gets the best purses by negotiating the purses with the promoter. And unfortunately, there are other people that are just in it to grab a piece of the fighter and don't do anything other than collect the paycheck. But again, that's probably true in the movie business, wherever you have talent, you know. But very, very important to have a manager who is really taking an active role in his fighter's career, like Shakur's manager. I mean,
James Prince.
Shakur has two managers, James Prince and Andre Ward. So Prince really handles everything outside of the ring and training. And Andre, who was one of the great fighters of our time, provides counsel to Shakur with tips about boxing and how to train. So those guys really earn their keep.
I was, today I had Roberto Duran. I don't know if you know, Bob, about the WBC talks, what we're doing. It's 52 days we have had when this thing opened, the pandemic. We sent everyone home from the office, but we decided to stay active. We needed to stay in touch. So we created the WBC talks, and we do one program in Spanish and then 2 hours later in English. This is round 52.
Right.
We've had Tyson, Chavez, Laila Lee, Sugar Ray, Duran this morning. So we were talking with Duran, and he just led us through his life. And his comment to the end, I told him, what would you say to a young kid who is got potential to be a superstar? Because he was telling us he lost the fights because he wouldn't train properly, because he would go out and drink, he would go out and spend, and he had 40, 50 friends that live every day and live by him. So he gave a very good advice to the kids. You have experienced so many huge careers. Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Manny Pacquiao, Leonard, Hagler, Hearns, Duran, Floyd, De La Hoya, Mayweather, and
Hagler. Robert Hagler.
oh yeah, I said Hagler, Hearns, Leonard.
Yeah, right.
I mean, what do you remember? Tell us a few stories. Who were your favorite fighters that you promoted? What combination can you recall? What would you like to share?
Well, first, I'm not going to say who my favorites are. That's like asking a parent who your favorite child is, right? Very hard.
Favorite moments, favorite.
No, I would say, I mean, now that you brought up Duran. Duran was one of the most enjoyable fighters that I ever was associated with. And for a lot of his career, he fought for Don King was his promoter. And then after the No Mas fight, King booked him to fight this English guy. And Duran didn't train and lost the fight. And King released him. And Duran showed up at our office and met with Teddy Brenner, and he wanted us to handle him and to get him back on the right path. And we were doing the 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗 fight in Miami a few months later. And we said we'd put him on that card. It was on the Orange Bowl, and we needed to sell tickets. So he said, okay, I'll be on that card, but I'm not going to fight before the main event. I'll only fight after the main event. So we agreed, and the 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗 fight was tremendous. And after that fight, we put Duran on with a guy named Bratton, an English guy. And he was so bad, Duran, that we had about 30,000 people in the Orange Bowl. And before the fight with Duran was over, I don't think we had 1,000 people left in the
Like a
stadium.
studio show.
Because like a studio, because
Famous.
it was so big.
Right.
So then I said, Teddy, what are we going to do with this guy? And Teddy said, well, we got 𝗥𝗡𝗨𝗡𝗗. Let's have Duran fight against 𝗥𝗡𝗨𝗡𝗗. We'll do it in Los Angeles. And we did that. And the winner of that fight was going to fight Davey Moore, the junior middleweight champion. We made that fight. It was supposed to be in South Africa, and the co-feature, Mancini, got hurt, so we canceled it, and we did the fight in Madison Square Garden. And Davey Moore was like a 5 or 6 to 1 favorite. He was a young guy and so forth. And Duran, even though he had beaten 𝗥𝗡𝗨𝗡𝗗, everybody felt that he had very little. So while we were promoting that fight, NBC was going to do, they did a Bob Hope Christmas special, and they were going to do the fight that never happened, Sugar Ray Leonard against Marvin Hagler. And Leonard, 2 days before the shoot, came down with appendicitis. So they called me up to get a substitute. And I suggested Duran, who was training for the Davey Moore fight. They said, okay, get Duran. Of course, Duran was willing to do it. Howard Cosell, who was the announcer in the skit, I'm not going to do it with Duran. We got him calmed down. And we flew Duran to Washington, D.C., where they were filming that particular segment of the program. And I'll never forget it. Duran and Hagler were getting ready in the same room, putting on the boxing. And Duran said in Spanish to Luis Spada, his manager, looking over at Hagler, he not so big. I beat Davey Moore, I'll fight Hagler. And so I made sure that Hagler came to the Moore-Duran fight in the Garden, just in case Duran won. And Duran himself sold out Madison Square Garden. There wasn't one seat to be had. It was the first legitimate sellout. This was in 1983, first legitimate sellout since Ali and Frazier fought their second fight in 74. 9 years, nothing like that. Sold out.
One of the great nights.
And one of the great nights. And Duran not only beat Davey Moore, but he annihilated him and knocked him out in a great fight. And so the president of Panama sent a plane. You know, remember, this was the period before. Duran wouldn't even go back to Panama because he was like persona non grata because of the No Mas fight. So the president sent the plane. We landed in Panama, and there was a parade from the airport to the presidential palace. And they said there were more people on the street in Panama City for that parade than there was for the Pope 6 months prior to that. And so, and then I visited Duran from time to time in Panama, and you're absolutely correct. He had this house that started as a small house, and he expanded. And there was a big grotto in front, and you'd come into the house, and he'd, you know, greet you, and then you'd go in the back, and there had to be 50 people drinking champagne, eating caviar. I mean, you know, you no matter how much you made, you couldn't live a lifestyle like that. But he was the most, I'll never forget, he takes my then wife and myself to a restaurant, and he's flashing this big ring that was like as big as a head. And, you know, what do you think of this? And he's saying, I said, beautiful. What am I going to say? I said, it's beautiful. He takes it off. He wants to give it to me. I said, no, no, no. But he was the kind of guy that would give you the shirt off his back. And you remember trips you took with him. I mean, he's the funniest guy. He was an entertainer. I mean, I love Roberto Duran. And he fought Hagler. People didn't give him much of a chance. And those fights went 15 rounds. And at the end of 13 rounds, it was equal. It was even. And then Hagler won the last 2 rounds. But again, a great fighter, great competitor, and a great person.
Have you thought of writing a book? Have you written a book?
I don't know. Maybe one day I will. I mean, I got to slow down. Every time things look like they're going easy, I mean, something like the coronavirus bites me in the ass, and I get working again. So when I have time, really, it takes time to write a book.
Yes, but have you dictated or initiated any process? Because this type of memories cannot go on written, cannot be left out of the history. I mean, it's fascinating.
That's what I'm concerned about, is the fact that all of these memories that I've lived will be forgotten.
Yes.
Because they will die with me, and that's not a good thing. So you're absolutely right. I've got to find the time to write a book. You can dictate it to a writer and so forth, and here's a problem too. To do a good book requires a lot of work for a writer. I mean, to do it really, he has to spend a lot of time with you and so forth to really get to the bottom of it and to write it well. And
yeah, you have to synthesize. You have to make it interesting.
Yeah. The good writer can do it. Now, it's a sports book, so it wouldn't sell very well. True. When the sports books they're nice to have, but they don't sell very well. So.
But you are not a sports book. Your book would be much more beyond sports.
Well, we looked for at one point when I was serious about it. We looked for. Boy, I was so thin then. Look at that.
I know, the
Look at that
double-breasted
picture.
suit too, huh?
Double-breasted suit.
No beard. I mean, I don't
No.
even recognize you.
Before contact lenses.
Right, too. Yeah.
Lenses,
Yeah.
yeah. I was taller than I am.
Yeah. What happened?
When was that? That was
That was
80,
Hagler.
85.
And, yeah.
85. So it's 15, 35 years.
Yeah.
35 years ago.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Look at that. Jimmy Ellis
Ellis.
and Muhammad Ali. Oh my God. All these memories. You thank God my memory is still very good. So, I see a picture of Ali, who fought Jimmy Ellis at the Astrodome in Houston after Ali had lost to Frazier.
Right.
And I can tell great stories about that.
That's
fight.
a book in itself with Ali.
Yeah.
You know?
So again, I will. I promise. Once we get this coronavirus licked,
He's got another 10 years, so we got to add another decade to it. So it's really not a problem because he's not going anywhere, believe it or not.
You are. We have announced we're going to dedicate 2021. We're going to call it the year of boxing. We're going to do celebrations every month to commemorate the many different things that we have to celebrate. We are losing basically a year, but we are looking ahead for the greatness. And one of the celebrations is going to be your 90 years.
no, that will be not in 20. Let me see.
Yeah.
20, I'll be 89. 21, I'll be 90.
Yeah.
90. Can you believe?
December, correct?
Can you believe it?
December 8th.
December 8th, 2021, we're gonna generate a party, a big celebration for you. Or we might do together, Don King and you, he's August, you're December, and we do a huge celebration. Both were born the same year. My father,
Yes,
was
that's right.
turning-
That's right. That's right.
That's what everybody said, that God punished mankind. 1931.
because 2021, you have 100 years of the first $1 million gate. We celebrate that. The 50 years of Ali Frazier won. The 90-year anniversary of Don King, Dick Cole, Bob Arum.
Oh,
So we're gathering all these
Great idea.
great mementos, and we would like you to participate actively to celebrate the year of boxing.
Particularly that first Ali Frazier fight, that was a seminal event because I think it was the major sporting event of its time, any sport. That fight, because of the political repercussions, Ali's stand against the Vietnam War, and how he tarred Frazier with the other side. And I think the whole world stopped, really stopped, when that fight took place. That was a unbelievable, seminal moment in the sport of boxing.
there's Dickie.
Yeah,
Dick Cole.
he always was fat.
Yeah. That's that Texas barbecue.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And what would you say are your top 5 promotions, events?
I put the Ali fights aside because it's hard to say they were my promotions. They were Ali's promotions. Ali was the greatest promoter ever. Anything I've learned about promoting, I learned from Muhammad Ali. So other than the Ali era, with the great fights, with the Frazier fights, the Spinks fights, I did all the Norton fights. Those were great fights. Put them aside because the truth is Ali carried those promotions. So for me, I look at the first Leonard Duran fight in Montreal. It was sort of half raining, outdoor. It was great. And, let me tell you, want to hear a good story about that fight?
Yeah.
All right. So, good. We could do it. We talked about Duran. So the fights was in Montreal, and the people who put up the money for the fight provided Leonard with one hotel and Duran with another hotel. And Duran, who was a rascal, had a spy outside of Leonard's hotel. And the spy waited until Leonard's then wife, Juanita, went out in a car shopping. And they would tip Duran off, and Duran would get into another car, and he would drive parallel with Juanita's car and say the most outrageous things. He said, after the fight, when I beat your husband, you and I go to bed together.
You said it a little bit more graphic like that.
You're right. And she reported back to Ray. And that's what Duran wanted. Duran knew that Ray was a great, great boxer, but he wanted to get Ray to brawl with him. And as a brawler, Duran was probably better than Leonard. Overall, Leonard was much better because he was a much better boxer. And you'll see that fight. It wasn't, and it was a 15-round fight. It wasn't until the end that Ray, you could see what the hell am I doing? Why am I brawling with the guy? I can outbox him. And so after Duran won that fight, and that led to the no mas fight, Ray, I don't think, ever lost a round to Duran. He won all the rounds in the no mas fight. And then years later, in 1989, when
Uno más.
Uno mas, where after Duran had beaten Iran Barkley in his tremendous fight, we opened up the Mirage in Las Vegas with Duran and Leonard, and Duran won every round. I mean, Leonard won every round because he boxed.
Remember how cold it was that night?
It was December.
Yeah.
Outside.
Outside. And you had to go through the little tunnel to get out.
The Mirage, yes.
And thank God there was no coronavirus because everybody was breathing on
Yeah,
everybody
forget
else.
So you have from the top 5, Leonard Duran. Which other event?
Well, Leonard Duran, 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, clearly great fight. 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, real, for me, a tremendous fight. Later on, certainly De La Hoya Trinidad, great fight. The 2 De La Hoya Chavez fights, because every Mexican American went crazy because of those fights. And then later on, I would think George Foreman beating Michael Moorer. All the great Pacquiao fights, Pacquiao De La Hoya, Pacquiao with Morales, Pacquiao with Marquez. Those were all great fights and really got everybody stirred up. There's Camacho, Macho Camacho with De La Hoya. I mean, Oscar, people remember the fights at the end of his career when he lost to Floyd and he lost to Manny Pacquiao. But Oscar was a hell of a fighter, ESPN replayed the De La Hoya Trinidad fight. And, I was stunned with the scoring of that fight. I thought Oscar won clearly 9 out of the 12 rounds, at worst 8. And the scoring in that fight seemed to me to be preposterous. Scoring in a lot of fights have taken away the importance of the fight and how great the fight was. I mean, the 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗 fight, the Mexican judge who scored that fight 10 rounds for Leonard and 2 rounds for 𝗥𝗢𝗨. That was insane.
Jojo Guerra.
Jojo Guerra. I mean, what was he watching? It was like a guy who had filled out his scorecard before he got to the fight. There's an argument who won that fight. Some people say Ray, but at best it was 7-5. Other people say Marvin. At best it was 7-5. So it was a close fight, but 10-2 really, or that Adelaide Bird scorecard with I think Canelo and Mayweather. What?
Canelo Golovkin.
Well, whatever. Canelo Golovkin. I mean, absurd scorecards.
This is a very important topic. I'm very happy you're touching on it. The WBC is always trying to implement new ideas, new rules, new processes. And we have found a wall. I don't know how my father did it to change from 15 to 12, to change the day of the weigh-in, to change so many things. But today, the resistance for change is unbelievable. We are very frustrated. Officiating is the most important matter because it's justice. A bad score, a bad result kills the sport.
Right.
So we have ideas, and I need to get together with the promoters and the networks and the commissions and have the open mind for the ideas. Just one example is the open scoring. We do open scoring after the 4th and after the 8th round all over the world, both in the USA and the UK. Why it's good? Because the fighter at least knows after the 4th round and after the 8th round what the judges are scoring, and they can adjust the strategy and not wait until the end and feel that they were robbed. That's one, the open scoring. Instant replay. We have struggled so hard to implement the instant replay to review the referee's mechanics. And now we are putting forward a remote judge scoring.
Yep.
In which, let me tell you, the traditional, of course, the official is right there, sitting there. But what is that judge watching? He's watching a different fight from the judge on the other side and the judge on the other side. They are looking up. They have the referee and the angles, the difficulty of really watching what really is happening, while millions of people are watching one image on the screen.
Correct.
With commentary and with different angles. But if we can get a system to have judges to watch in a good setting, and then if you can have 5, 7, 10 judges judging a fight, and if 7 out of 9 see one win, it's clearly, you know, you minimize the possibility of a controversy. So I hope that you give us the opportunity to present these ideas.
Well, I think there should be a seminar. There's a lot of, you raise a lot of different issues. It is clear that having judges at different sides of the ring, they will see different fights. That's not necessarily bad. That's not necessarily bad, because a fighter sitting on the right side can see a punch landing, and a fighter sitting on the other side might not see the same punch. So, I mean, we understand that. But I think that a problem is that the judges sit right up to the ringside. That means, like you said, they're looking up and they're seeing the fight from a stupid angle. They're staring up and they can't see as well as they could if they were, again,
Even or higher.
social distancing.
Right.
If they were back, and they would see it, I think, better. And now we're going to see if that's the case, because of the social distancing.
Right.
The Nevada
Maybe they get a better
Commission
view.
is not letting the judges sit right up to the ring.
Right.
They're putting them back 8 feet. Let's see. Let's see.
Maybe they say something
also,
themselves.
I understand that you're going to have virtual judging of our fights, just to see. And our commission called me and they said, "What do you think of it?" I said, "Well, he's entitled to do it." So they said, "Well, I think we need to bring in Steve Weisfeld, who's a really, so we're not going to be embarrassed."
Right.
So they're flying Weisfeld in from New York, and he'll stay in the bubble for 2 weeks and do 4 events.
But Marissa, we applaud you for trying. I mean, what is the
Trying,
harm in
yeah.
trying all this?
I
mean,
think once
maybe it
this
works.
clears up, right?
Yeah.
Once this clears up, we get everybody together, have a serious seminar
Discussion, yeah.
with no bullshit, get everybody's thoughts on the table, and see where we go from there.
And Marissa, like you said, what is the harm in doing this? And officiating is so important. And as we often talk during the fall, how many times have the Cowboys been the, the problem, they're getting all the bad calls. They never get a break
Yes.
from the officials. It cost us 2
Bullshit.
Super Bowls for
Bullshit.
crying out loud.
The league
I mean, we
leans
need
over.
good
The league,
officiating.
league
Well,
leans
what is
over
that?
backward
We'd have 2
for
more
the
Super Bowl
Cowboys. Jerry
trophies if we
Jones
get a
owns
win.
that league.
I mean, it's
Come
incredible.
on, come on, come on,
Oh.
come on. You see how good Jason Garrett is when he's the offensive coordinator for the Giants.
Well, I think, let me give an opinion. Hopefully you can get this done. If the judges are gonna be 8 feet out,
Mhm.
why don't you try to have a very high platform
Right.
Mhm.
for them to watch at
High
a
level. Mhm.
I mean,
That's an excellent suggestion.
Right.
this is
Instead
a
of being
good
up-
time to try things out.
Right, there's
Because-
plenty of room.
Because everybody says they have the best seat in the house, but they
They
don't
don't.
because of the angle they're looking at. And and particularly when you have older people, it's very hard to move your neck quickly, So you're absolutely right. I mean, it's insane to have, in my opinion, let's see what happens, to have the judges that close.
We'll put the
and
TV
so
platforms
low.
underneath the chairs.
Yeah,
That's
right.
all. And just let them set up.
Right.
Yeah, it's easy. Now we have the space to do it at least. Before you have a guy literally up against the ring with all photographers and cramping on him and everything like that. So
Yeah, and
So again,
they will not block any fans' view. So
right, again, we should take this opportunity when we're doing these fights without spectators to experiment on a lot of these things
and see what
and
works.
to see what works.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, always in history of mankind, out of bad times, out of plagues, out of recessions, out of depressions, comes good. Comes good. People adjust, and there's certain, things that happen that help society. Hopefully, we'll use this opportunity to improve the sport.
how is Lobby?
Lovey, thank God, is great, but she's had lung problems, so we have to protect her. And, she has to be very, very careful. And because I sleep in the same bed, I got to be very careful too. I mean, I believe I'm impregnable, but, I don't want to carry any disease into the bed with me.
Please give her our best. She's a
Well, thank you, Mauricio.
beautiful lady. She truly brings the
And she
best out of
produced
it.
Todd. She gave us Todd for boxing, right?
Well, Todd is a dear friend,
I know.
and I know that he's what you were saying on how the young minds and how to update and to be up to date on everything. I hear you have put a great team together, and you said Don King, great promoter.
Right.
I mean, natural, great ability, and his unfortunate mistake was to be a one-man show.
Exactly.
It's
That was his personality.
yes, and what's your favorite music?
Beatles.
The
There's
Beatles.
nothing for me like the Beatles. Soon as I heard them, I went crazy about them. That's my favorite. There's Me with Ali. You know when that was
Lonnie.
taken? That was at Ali's birthday party,
Here.
70th birthday party
At the
in
MGM.
Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And after it was at the end, Ali was sitting up there, and Stevie Wonder came out and sang Happy Birthday. And we all wheeled. I brought in as many fighters I could find that fought him. I was still
Ernie
around.
Shavers.
Ernie Shavers,
Larry
Kenny
Holmes.
Norton, Larry Holmes. They all came out. Hagler and Leonard all came out with this huge birthday cake.
Yeah.
Beckham was there, and we all came out. And then I went up to wish him personally a birthday, and that's that picture.
That's a beautiful
I
picture.
remember that beautiful picture.
And your favorite movie?
Favorite movie, Casablanca, and next favorite was The Godfather. you know, that for me, The Godfather, tremendous movie. But I can watch. I think I've watched, and there's a third, Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles. Anytime I want to laugh, I play Blazing Saddles. What a great genius movie that was.
Gene Wilder and
Gene
what's his
Wilder
name?
and yeah.
The brilliant character.
And your favorite food?
What?
Food.
Food.
Favorite food? Probably Italian food. Probably Italian food, because I remember as the Beatles, right? With Ali, yeah, knocking them down. And my favorite food is Italian food because of all the summers and winters and events I did in Italy with the great late Rodolfo Sabatini. And I love, we in America, Italian food was Italian food. It was primarily Southern Italian, Sicilian. But when I went to Italy, I realized that every region had a different kind of food, whether it's Tuscan food or Genoa food. And with Sabatini, we went from town to town doing these fights. And I got to understand Italian cooking, and believe me, the greatest in the world. There's nothing in the world like good Italian cooking.
The knockouts.
The knockouts, yeah.
This has been a great success to have a. I don't think any promoter ever has their own set of models, and they are beautiful. They are classy.
That's why they call me the Sheikh. I have my own harem. No, they're lovely girls, and they're really, you know, they send a good message because they're bright, they're intelligent, and they're not dummies, and they have other jobs as well. And it's been a pleasure to work with them, and it's nice to have the same young ladies,
Right.
You know, on all our shows.
Makes us look good too.
And that's why, even though we're doing these shows without spectators, we felt that we would still have at least 2 of these knockouts at every show.
And just to wrap it up, we're going to do an exercise. I'm going to give you 6 categories, okay? And Bob will go first, then Carl. And you're going to say which fighter you would put as the greatest in that category.
Okay.
Okay? So we're going to start with the punching power. Who would that be?
Punching power. I think modern era, the Japanese kid, Inoue, and maybe Deontay Wilder. On this era. Past eras, Mike Tyson, Ernie Shavers, tremendous, and Joe Louis, tremendous knockout powers in the heavyweight division.
Love it. How about you, Carl?
I was going to say Mike Tyson and a guy that doesn't, you know, he just got into the Hall of Fame, but I thought Julian Jackson was one of the best punchers I've ever seen. You know, the former junior middleweight champ.
Okay. Bob Arum will have the choice to say as many as he wants. You can get 2, okay?
Okay. I'll only remember 2.
Jab.
Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard.
Carl?
Larry Holmes.
If it was Family Feud, Larry Holmes would be the first
There you
from all that we have done.
There you go.
Chin.
Muhammad Ali, unbelievable. Unbelievable chin. And except for the Tommy Hearns fight, Roberto Duran.
Hagler, I thought had one of the best chins.
Uh-huh. Okay. Heart.
Ugh, they all, getting the ropes, they all had. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. had a big heart. Manny Pacquiao. it's hard to pick just two because, I mean,
No, you can say as many as you want. You are Bob Arum, so
yeah, when
ours is
you
limited.
talk about courageous people, you mentioned boxers with unbelievable hearts. Duran certainly, Chavez certainly, marvelous Marvin Hagler certainly, Muhammad Ali certainly. Boxers have big hearts. Boxers are courageous. Boxers fight until the end. Eric Morales, all the Mexicans, Marquez, Barrera, they all have hearts bigger than their bodies. I mean, it is a very hard question to designate a couple of fighters with hearts because all of them, not all of them, most of them have big hearts.
Chuck Williams sends his best regards to Bob Arum.
Give him my best. Give him my best. Is he in Hawaii?
In Hawaii, yes.
Yeah, well, that's a
Too bad,
beautiful,
yeah,
that's
right.
a beautiful place. No coronavirus in Hawaii. It's too nice.
Carl,
It's easy for me. I'd say Arturo Gatti.
I knew you would
I
say.
around him so much.
Sure. And Mickey also.
Yeah, and Mickey, of
Ward.
course.
Speed of hands.
Pacquiao's hand speed, I thought, was exceptional. And another guy with great hand speed was Leonard. Leonard really tremendous hand speed.
Yeah, I'll say Ali because it was so strange to see it as a heavyweight, and Meldrick Taylor when I just in the gym when I saw him a lot and in fights, I just a blur.
Okay, defense.
I think Andre Ward and the current crop of fighters has a marvelous defense. And of course, maybe the best defensive fighter of all times was Floyd Mayweather.
Carl?
Purnell, Whitaker.
Yeah, it's another one.
Yeah.
And the final one is overall boxing skills, ring generalship.
Muhammad Ali, by far, #1. And second to Muhammad Ali, I would ring generalship. I would say maybe Leonard.
Even though we didn't get to see him, you'd have to maybe think Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah, well, I don't
That's
count him
obvious, but
because I never saw
Ali,
him.
and then the big names that you always come up with,
Willie
Mayweather,
Pep.
Willie Pep, guys that.
But those guys we didn't see.
Right.
And the
You might
problem,
have seen him.
and the problem is that I know I'm not that old. The problem is that when we look at their fight films, it looks like they're slow.
Right.
Because
Of the film.
Because of the film is
Yeah.
slow. So you see a Joe Louis fight and say, my God, anyone in the modern heavyweights would beat him. Not true. It's because the film
Right.
and the technology is
High
so
definition
slow.
wasn't around back
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
Yeah, it's by square,
Frames, yeah,
Mhm.
by frames, exactly.
right.
Well, I want to thank you dearly for this opportunity to entertain, to share your stories, your knowledge with the world. This program goes many places, and I am sure that it's gonna be one of the best considered because it's so nice to be with one of the greatest. How can I put it? It's difficult to understand your place in history, Mr. Arum. Boxing, as you know, comes from the caveman era, then Egypt and Crete and Rome, then it disappeared in the Middle Ages. Then it was brought back in England in the late 70s or 1700s. So we were talking about 300 years of history.
Right.
150 in the most modern, but the real last century and this century. And you are on top of the list of the greatness.
No, that's nice to hear. But please, after we have this Tuesday show and then Thursday, call me Friday morning. Give me your critique. I want to hear what you have to say about the 2 shows that we will have done next week.
And we're actually heading over to MGM now for a survey, and we're gonna, see if we can put those platforms on for the chairs for the judges.
Excellent, excellent.
That's great. Yeah.
Carl, you know what I feel for you,
Mhm.
especially Cowboys. Let's see
Absolutely.
what happens.
Yes.
See, now you ruined everything. The Cowboys, Jesus, look at the wall. I got a whole giant.
Well, let's just hope we have a season where we can all have fun and enjoy it
Yeah,
and
right,
go to a game.
right.
Excellent. So best of luck. Thank you for taking the courageous step in favor of our sport.
Mhm.
We need that drive to go out and make things happen. It's going to be tremendous. It's going to be, the world will be watching, and we wish you the best of luck on the promotion and the series. And God willing, this will be the opening valve for boxing to be back in the world.
Right, and all other promoters, we welcome you to contact us, to get our protocols, to provide it to your commissions or your national bodies, what we're doing here. I'm sure after you read it, you'll improve upon it, but it's a start, and we've done the work, and we're happy to offer it to you without any charge or any recognition. Just take it and run with it.
Excellent. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Take care and see you
Soon.
Tuesday night.
Regards to all in Mexico.
Thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mauricio, Mr. Arum, Carl. It was a great show. I'm always quiet when I'm next to Bob Arum because I learned something always. And I will be calling the Tuesday fight,
Yes, that's right. That's
and
right.
it will be a pleasure to be
Yeah, I
calling
mean,
that fight.
it's gonna,
And it's a pleasure to
you
work
know,
with you.
and then it starts up in Mexico. We're gonna be televising 3 of Fernando's fights.
June 20th we start.
June 20th we start.
Excellent.
It was great having you here, and I'm gonna be waiting for the book.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
The movie might be better than the book.
Okay.
We'll do that too.
See you.
Thank you. All right.
How do we get it on?
It'll click off by itself.